What's up, everybody? Hope you are enjoying your Tuesday morning. I'm sure this is probably when you're listening, or Tuesday afternoon, or Tuesday evening, or Wednesday. Hopefully before Wednesday, before midnight, because I'm pretty sure that's before, that's going to be right around lock. Anyways, welcome back to another edition of Shot 3 from the Tee. I'm your host, Jason Roslin, for today's episode, hopefully for another couple episodes, maybe for a little while, until I get my guy Ben Raza to join me after football season starts. And of course, going to have Matt Jones at Matt Jones TFR on the second segment here as he joins me yet again. Must be doing something okay there to have him come back a couple of times. So this week it's going to be a little different because we don't have that many field changes, so it may not be as long as normal, but we'll get into some salary discussion and get into some of these players from around the world that we'll learn a little bit about. So maybe still have enough content to do our normal 15-minute segment here and then another 10 to 15-minute segment with Matt. So let's jump right in. Top 5 breakdown. I had Brooks at 11.8, JT at 11.6, Fleetwood 10.7, Decky 10.4, and Woodland 10.1 with Spieth at 9.3. And, I didn't get any right. I didn't even get the position right on anybody. However, I did get, 4 golfers correct. Brooks, JT, Fleetwood, and Decky in the top 5, joined by Victor Hovland, incredibly enough. But this time, DK threw out a wrench, and they priced a lot of guys above 10K. So they throw Hovland in there. Then they throw in Colin Morikawa at 10.1 and Spieth at 10. So very interesting. We don't ever see 7, but probably because of the no cut here and going deep down the list as well. No surprise, I guess, to see a little bit more. But surprise in my eyes to see Jordan Spieth at 10K. Anyways, so JT is at 11.7, Brooks at 11.4, Decky 10.7, Hovland 10.5, Fleetwood 10.3, Morikawa 10.1, Spieth 10. So that rounds out above 10K. Like I said, none right in either position or the price. So tough bout for me this week after I had gone a couple of weeks back to back where I had nailed a couple. This week I'm going to get the goose egg. Hopefully I won't have the goose egg in my DFS lineups like I did last week. I ended up coming in, I think it was 5th or 6th or 4th in the FanDuel $9. But because they're so top heavy during this time of the season, it did not pay for my DraftKings losses, where I played pretty much zero of Lanto Griffin, as we talked about yesterday. So moving on to the field this week, we talked about last night that the different qualifications that got you in. So now I'm going to actually announce those players. The 5 players that made it from the Korean PGA Tour. This is where, oh man, my pronunciations are going to be probably pretty bad. I don't know. I'm going to just give it my best, guys. So bear with me. Jae-Young Woo Ham is a 25-year-old, ranked 285th in the world due to 3 wins this year, 1 on the Korean Tour and 2 on the ATVT Tour. Hyung Joon Lee, a 27-year-old, ranked 251st in the world due to mostly his win at the 10th Descent Korea Munsing match play here earlier this year. I'm sorry, he came in 60th place last year, so he did play in the CJ Cup last year. Soo-Min Lee, a 26-year-old winner back in 2016 on the European Tour. He won that Shenzhen International Tournament. Hasn't really done much since, though. He did win the KJ Choi Invitational this year. Next is Kyung Jun Moon, ranked 356th in the world after a huge finish this last week at the Genesis, where he finished in second, vaulting him up the Korean PGA Tour leaderboard or money list getting into this week. And Woon Joon Lee, ranked 293rd in the world, a 33-year-old. His best finish was a win this year at the 72nd KPGA Championship, the Korean PGA Championship. So those are the 5 Korean golfers from the Korean Tour that are playing this week. 2 players from the Asian Tour. One we are quite familiar with at this point, Jazzy Jazz Janawantanand, I believe. Yeah, that I'm doing my best. He came in tied for 14th at the PGA Championship at Bethpage earlier this year. Ranked 57th in the world, so playing some really good golf. Plays most of it on the Japanese tour. I haven't seen anything about him coming over here and making a start over here or what have you. But still, ranked 57 in the world, pretty good. The other guy from the Asian tour, because there's 2 this week that are getting in, is Tahi Lee, ranked 420th in the world, a 35-year-old that has played pretty good on the Asian tour this year, but has struggled elsewhere. Next is 3 Koreans based on the official world golf ranking. Sang Hyun Park is the first one, a 36-year-old that is primarily playing on the Japan and Asia tour, but a tied for 16th at the Open vaulted him up to 111th in the world, where he is now. That gets him in. John Gong Huang, a 27-year-old, ranked 160th in the world, mainly due to his second-place finish at the Japan Championship. And then Yi Kin Chang, a 25-year-old that has had a good year, actually, on the Asian tour, winning just 4 starts ago as well. So not a bad year for Chang. Now we'll move on to the sponsors exemptions, which probably have a few more familiar faces. KJ Choi. I think he leads the Koreans, for native-born Koreans, in career PGA Tour earnings, I'm sure. Victor Hovland scoring a sponsors exemption. That's probably why we haven't seen him over here in the fall swing, as he does a little bit of world traveling. Michael Kim, who has had a really rough go of it lately. KH Lee, who we saw pop a couple of times last year at the Honda Classic. A Korean amateur, Young Jun Bae. Wee Kim, and probably the most surprising one to me, and he did just make the cut a couple of weeks ago, but it's Chase Koepka. So really interesting there. Chase Koepka gets another sponsor's invite here this week. So no open qualifiers for an invitational tournament, especially in a no-cut event. However, last week we had 4, as we mentioned. Logan McCracken missed the cut. Andy Zhang made the cut, had a pretty good finish too. George Cunningham missed the cut, and Jeremy Gandon, I believe, also missed the cut as well. Let me verify on that. Actually, while I take a quick sip of water here before we move on to our next segment. Actually, I'm sorry. Gandon made the cut and finished in 66. So 2 of 4 Monday qualifiers made the cut and made some money. And probably could have helped out a couple of your lineups as well. So let's move on to the opening odds and salary discussion, which we've already talked a little bit about, and we'll go into a little bit more detail in segment 2 with Matt Jones. But Tommy Fleetwood, 20-1, coming off a 5th place finish at the BMW PGA Championships on the European Tour. His win is going to come this year. Finau and Fleetwood, the 2 Fs, have been so good, so consistent for so long in majors, in big tournaments, but just can't get a win. Their win is going to come this year. I feel it. And maybe Tommy Fleetwood gets it done this week. 20-1 is a pretty good opening odds. My mid guy will be Corey Connors at 66-1. Corey Connors is very good tee to green, and if this course plays a little easier, pins are a little easier, or he catches just a little bit fire with the putter, you could see Corey Connors easily get up into the top 10, especially in a field like this. So look at the top 10, top 20 odds there, and then my long shot, Wyndham Clark, who is 200-1, probably because he's missed back-to-back cuts in this fall swing. But they've both been right on the number, and he's played pretty well in them for his style of golf. He's not good with his approaches, but very good off the tee and his driver, and with his putter. And I'll talk a little bit more about him here in the next segment with Matt Jones that you can have when you come back on the other end. So I'll sign off here for the Shot 3 from the T-Pod. Thanks so much for listening these first couple of weeks. I hope these short form 20 to 25 minute pods are a little easier to consume, breaking them up so you're not listening to me for 40 minutes or so, because who really wants to do that? I don't want to do that, that's for sure. And if you're listening to them at 1.5x, you can get these done in 15 minutes and hopefully give you at least a few ideas of people to bet on, people to play on DraftKings or FanDuel or Fantasy Draft or Yahoo, wherever you may be playing. So Want to see something else or want to see something added to these pods, just go ahead and contact me. Let me know, and I'll be sure to get them on. Or if you want to join me, you can as well. I've had a few people reach out to me, and I'm going to definitely fill them in, especially with the time when we don't have tournaments coming up in a couple of weeks. We're off for a month. So until next week, everybody, next Sunday night, Monday morning, we will see you on the other side. And thanks everybody for listening again. Cheers. All right, welcome back to the second segment of the Shot 3 from the Tee podcast. And I am here this week joined for consecutive weeks in a row now. I don't even know where we're at because it's just been so many. So we must be doing something okay. It's Matt Jones at Matt Jones TFR on Twitter. Matt, welcome back to the pod. What's happening, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Doing well over here. We had an interesting week last week, and now we're heading over to Asia.
Yeah, and it's really fun. I think at least it's different because, as I mentioned on the top of this, the lock is going to be basically in the middle of the night, and then you're going to be done with your golf sweat, the big golf sweat at least by probably 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, and if you're playing Euro, probably by 11:30. So golf is done before football even begins. I won't even have to really fight for a TV in the house. How about you?
We won't football money, so
right? Yeah, DraftKings is probably going to get some more football money if they pay out in time. In any case, though, we are here. We're going to Asia. It is the CJ Cup. 9 Bridges is the course. It's really beautiful course, and we saw last year Brooks Koepka win it. First time going. Year before that, it was obviously the first year of in existence. Justin Thomas won it. So don't necessarily need to have seen the course to play well here. But Brooks, one thing that stuck out to me when I was looking last night is that his best statistical category on his approaches last year was, I'll call it the mid-irons, the 175 to 200. These guys are probably hitting 6 and 7 iron, most of them. And he was the best at it last year, and he won this tournament. You think that's a good correlation? And if so, who else did you pinpoint from that distance?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, for this length course, I think that's definitely something that we should look at. I've been alluding to it every week, I think, so far, but as far as like a career skill, like long-term, in the fall swing, like I said, I always kind of lean a little bit more heavily on what I'd consider like, raw talent rather than just recent form, because some of these guys aren't playing much. So Decky is a guy at 10-7 who is like the tops in this category for proximity from 175 to 200. So he's a guy that I'm somewhat interested in. Obviously, he hasn't, 16th at the Shriners. He missed a cup before that. So we've really only seen him a couple times, and he's been striking it well, though. Are you interested in Decky at all?
Yeah, 10.7, and I talked for a couple of minutes on the top of this segment, or segment 1, I should say, about him, and was surprised that they put him all the way up at 10.7 with kind of those 2 lackluster starts over the fall. You got Tommy Fleetwood, who's coming off a big finish in the European Tour. Victor Hovland, the same thing, and he was, as I was just mentioning, he was a huge surprise in the price. But yeah, I think because of that and because of his form isn't playing that well, I think that you'll maybe get a little discounted ownership. That's certainly not the discussion we're having. We're talking about stats, but whenever you look at proximity with Hideki, he seems like he should be in the top of almost all of these. And in the screener that I did last night that I put in my first cut article, he was the only guy along with Koepka to be in all 3 of the screeners. And that's just kind of Decky's game. So, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, and I think the ownership will interest me a little bit. How about anybody else?
Yeah, right below him, Victor Hovland has the best score in my power ranking model in general, and
wow.
He's the last 24 rounds, he's second in this category, so he popped a little bit too. A little bit cheaper though, Corey Connors is a name that's kind of interesting. He's 4th in this category over the last 24 rounds. His short game obviously has been pretty bad over his last few starts, but that's kind of been his story in general.
Sure
so
has.
I'm not really terribly worried about it.
Yeah, and it's a no-cut event too, so.
Right. Yeah. So he's a guy at 7,800 that I don't think I'm not doing ownership right now, but I can't imagine that he would be particularly chalky.
No, and he does seem like he sets up for a good play, a really good ball striker, plus a really good finish in a field like this. Might just give Ernie Els what he needs to get Corey Connors on that President's Cup team coming up just over 2 months from now. So certainly something to think about there. Okay, so next one that I looked at, 50 to 125 yards. We'll go quickly on that. I just found that there's an opportunity for guys that may not hit it as long, but still relatively long, to have maybe 7 or 8 chances this week per day. And one of the guys that screened out to me, obviously, when we're talking about wedge game and we're talking about in the fairway, would be Jordan Spieth. He also popped up on the birdie or better percentage, which, granted, probably was a lot to do with his putting, which, again, popped up for me. But who else do you make in the 50 to 125 in the birdie and better category?
When I think of that, sort of right off the top of my head, I would sort of be leaning towards a guy like maybe like Streelman or Reavie. Reavie's 8,300, I think.
Yep.
And he obviously just recently missed the cut at the Shriners, but I don't know, like he seems like he would make sense here if we're targeting this stat. So Reavie's a guy that I'm still interested in despite the miscut from, I guess, what was that, 2 weeks ago?
Yep. So, yeah, interesting. Okay. And how about, now I always have you see if you can bring a stat to the table. So, any that you found before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit the last week with the splits. I think par 72 over 7,200 yards is an interesting category because I think it filters out a little bit of the par 70 shorter stuff.
Yep.
And some guys that we think could score pretty well here. Decky pops in that. He's gains almost twice as many strokes tee to green on those types of courses compared to shorter courses. And for a couple of cheaper guys, I figure, it's not always that exciting to talk about the expensive guys.
Yeah, sure.
Ryan Palmer at 7,200 on those types of courses over the last 24 rounds is 6th in DraftKings points.
Wow. And
he averages almost 4 times as many strokes tee to green on these types of courses over the past couple of seasons. So that was one of the biggest splits that I saw.
Yeah, Ryan Palmer checking a few boxes for me. Now, do you think that the stat, this is a great lead-in, do you think that the strokes gained on the par 72, specifically at 7,200 yards or more, we tend to see driving distance play a little heavier into it? I mean, Ryan Palmer, relatively long, 60th on the tour last year, 15th in birdie or better, had a really good finish here as well last year. So he definitely is knocking a couple. But my kind of philosophy, if it's down to 1 or 2 guys, I would take driving distance this week because it's not overly long for a par 72.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a ton of sense.
Now, do you think anything specifically about this golf course from what you've watched at why it fit Ryan Palmer last year, or do you think it was just a good run of form that he was going into?
I think the form obviously helped. What was he? Trying to remember now. He had played well the week leading in, I think, was it the CIMB last year, I think?
Yeah, they had one. Yeah, they had one before, correct. Yep, before it last year. It was the CIMB, yep.
And he had played well in the playoffs last year too, so he was definitely in form. But I just think that this course makes a little bit of sense. Like you said, he's 60th in driving distance. He's never gonna overpower a course, but he can keep pace enough with the longer guys, and he's also a little bit more accurate than some of the bombers. So I think that bodes well for him. Pretty much wherever he plays, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Decky, Ryan Palmer. How about a third guy from that stat?
A little bit deeper. Kevin Tway at 6,800.
Oh boy. You're stroking my airwaves now.
He's my guy. He gains 3 times as many strokes tee to green on these types of courses He, over his past 3 starts, he's gained strokes pretty much everywhere but off the tee. And I think that that's like the strength of his game. So I think if that snaps into place, he does have the distance to overpower a course like this. And we've seen that in the past. So he's a guy that I'm always interested in if distance is any kind of factor.
Yeah, and certainly good for DraftKings points as well, even when he came in dead last place at the WGC, FedEx St. Jude. He threw in a hole-in-one so that he could get himself back to paying a value off. 29th at the Shriners, so I'm okay with that. 6,700, no cut. I love it. I really do. I like stuff like that. One other name that I want to see if he's popped up on your list, and that's Wyndham Clark. He is a great putter. Birdie or better is also great. What say you? Anything about Wyndham Clark?
I hadn't really thought about him. I think he's lost strokes on approach lately.
Almost every time he plays, to be completely honest with you. he's how can I say, he's pretty much Jordan Spieth, but can actually drive the ball very far. He's so bad with his approaches. I think he gained last year like 2 or 3 times of the whole entire year, but he gets it done a different way. We need some cheap options. I guess I was looking for a guy that I know can drive the ball a long way and is a good putter, because I feel like in a no cut might help you. 6,300 price too, so it's really cheap.
Yeah, and he, like you're saying, he's around guys that have almost no shot of doing anything. So I can definitely see 6,300 is super palatable at that price.
Yeah, three times exactly, by the way. I was right. 3 times all year last year. He gained with his approaches. So, again, it's certainly, you really are sweating the par 5s when it comes to Wyndham Clark. Pretty good around the greens, too. So, and his short game is good, whereas he only gained 3 times with his approaches, which probably means, that not that many more ball striking. He gained, I would say probably 80%, looking very quickly at my board right here. 80% of the time short. So I like stuff like that. Now, one other quick thing before we go on the course difficulty. We saw last year's winner, Brooks Koepka, get to, pretty decent. I think it was 17 under. And the year before that, though, it was only 9 under. You think that was all wind? Or do you think they made the course easier after the first year when the scoring didn't even get into the double digits?
I think that they probably made a bit of an effort for that to happen. One thing, sort of randomly, if you look at the superintendent's report or whatever,
yep.
It says that they've gotten 56 inches of rain in the last 5 weeks.
What?
That seems like a lot. So I think that it's going to be pretty soft. And I think that there's definitely going to be some scoring opportunities.
Yeah, 56. That's insane. Definitely something to take note of, though. That really could help the Bombers if it does play a little shorter. So, all right, perfect. We're at 12 and a half minutes, so that's right on our mark. Before we go, I've touched a bit about it in the first 2 segments here and on yesterday's. No cuts. Do you have anything specific that you do, whether it's play more, play less? I've seen people do both sides. Also, do you have anything specifically on strategy-wise that you do that you want to give out?
Yeah, I mean, I typically play, I actually play a lot more cash in no-cut events. I think that that's kind of counterintuitive for some people. I always get, like, sort of a shocked response when I say that, but I feel more comfortable, taking these deeper shots and saying, I can grab all this upside with the Kevin Tway, where if this was a cut event, or maybe I wouldn't play him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, I think it's worth taking a couple extra shots at cash, like double ups, or seem like they're a little bit softer in these tournaments. So yeah, that's kind of my strategy.
Interesting. Well, always good to go against the grain. I'm all about that. So, well, Matt, thanks for joining me today. We'll probably have you again on next week. Can't see a reason not to. Until, hopefully, as long as we don't start another World War III, we should be good. Thanks again for joining, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, of course.
All right.